Welcome to the Daily Insider here on VegasInsider.com for Thursday, March 11th, 2021. Kevin Rogers with you. Hope all is well. And a very big day in college basketball. Wall-to-wall games going on right now all throughout the afternoon. And then tonight, and also you have the NBA tonight. So much going on and so much to go over. We'll also get to the free picks today from our handicappers at VegasInsider.com in just a little bit, as those free picks went 2-1 last night. So a good start for that. But we'll go over that in just a little bit. First, let's get right to the college basketball. And already a couple games ongoing. And first in the Big 12, West Virginia leads Oklahoma State 49-44. That's part of the Big 12 quarterfinals in Kansas City. And West Virginia closes a 3-point favorite in that game. And the Mountaineers up by 5 with 11 and a half minutes to go in the second half. In the Big 10, Maryland leads Michigan State 42-30. And that game in the second half from Indianapolis. And the Spartans had an early lead in this one, but the Terrapins have stormed back. And obviously a huge game for Michigan State for bubble purposes in the NCAA tournament. How about this? So Georgetown blows out Marquette yesterday, and they get Villanova today. They fall down 8-0 early, and right now the Hoyas leading the top-seeded Villanova Wildcats 37-35 at halftime, and Villanova closes 6.5-point underdog. So we'll see if Patrick Ewing can take the Hoyas into the semifinals. Syracuse in front of Virginia 39-36. Virginia, the number one seed in the ACC tournament, and Syracuse off the blowout over NC State yesterday, and the Orange up by 3 at the half. USF leads Temple 38-37 at halftime in the American, and at halftime in the SEC, Kentucky, they are on the clock as they trail Mississippi State 44-30 at halftime. So a pretty poor showing there for Cal and the Wildcats, and they'll be likely knocked out unless they have a big rally. Now, before we get to the rest of the games today, in case you didn't hear it, and you see it here on the screen, Duke heads home. That's right. Why? But they beat Louisville last night. Well, there was one positive COVID case in the Duke Blue Devils camp. So they were supposed to play Florida State tonight, and that game now wiped out. Duke is going home. FSU advances to the next round. Interestingly enough, Duke and FSU had a game wiped out earlier this year because of COVID issues with Florida State. But now the Seminoles advance, and Duke is done. So their streak of 24 consecutive tournament appearances is over. I mean, you could technically say it was over last year, but it was over for everyone last year. But now Coach K and the Blue Devils, who needed a few wins to get in the tournament, they beat Boston College, they beat Louisville, and now they're out without even losing a game. So that's some tough news for Duke. I know we all like to pile on Duke at times, but tough news for them. Now the big question is, what will happen either A, if there is a conference championship and there's a COVID case, or B, if we get to the NCAA tournament next week and somebody's got a positive COVID case, do we just advance the other team? How do they work it out? So hopefully this is the only case that we see in the tournaments this week and then moving forward. So again, Duke out of the ACC tournament and their season pretty much over. So let's take a look at college basketball, and we'll go to our matchup page. And let's take a look. Excuse me, I had to sneeze, but I'd rather turn off the microphone than let you hear it. So in the MAC, you have, actually let's go to the matchups. So what's the scores? There we go. Ball State and Toledo are headed, looks like, towards overtime, and Toledo, the number one seed in the MAC, that being played in Cleveland. Toledo, an 8-point favorite. So unless Toledo can have a big run in overtime, then Ball State will end up covering in that one. Ohio and Kent State, the next game up in the MAC, and the Bobcats laying 2 against Kent State. Miami of Ohio and Buffalo looking for their 6th straight win, and the Buffalo Bulls an 8.5-point favorite in that one. And to close out the night, Bowling Green and Akron, and the Zips a short favorite there against Bowling Green. Kind of just ran through the MAC because we had a lot of games to get to. Michigan State and Maryland ongoing. Next game up, Minnesota and Ohio State. Normally fun on the football field, but also we'll look at it on the basketball court. As Minnesota snapped their long losing streak in last night's victory over Northwestern. And Minnesota was up early in that game. Northwestern came back and took the lead, and then Northwestern went scoreless in the final 3 or 4 minutes of that game. And another point to bring up, and somebody else brought this up, so I'm not going to take the credit for it, but I'll just talk about it now, that the Big Ten tournament is being played at Lucas Oil Stadium. It's not at Bankers Life Fieldhouse in Indianapolis where it's normally played, or the United Center in Chicago. It's being played in a football stadium. And we've seen before in the Final Four, these games that get played in football stadiums, they're not very high-scoring games. It's tough to get the depth perception. It's not as easy to shoot the ball in a football stadium as opposed to a basketball arena. So both games last night in the Big Ten, Minnesota Northwestern and Penn State Nebraska, each easily finished under the total. Well, I'll say Minnesota Northwestern was easier than Penn State Nebraska, but both games finished under the total. So keep an eye on that moving forward in the Big Ten to see how many more games will finish under, or if the odds makers adjust the under because the conditions are different than what you see in a normal conference tournament. So Minnesota, they are a dog today, a 10.5-point dog against Ohio State. And that game coming up in a bit. And Ohio State did not play well to close the season. 4 straight losses. Now, granted, 3 of the losses coming to Michigan, Iowa, and Illinois. And Michigan State, we know, is very up and down. And Minnesota, not exactly on the level of those teams. But Ohio State did get blown out by Minnesota, 77-60 in Minneapolis back in early January. So something to maybe keep an eye on, that Minnesota already has beaten Ohio State this year. Now the Buckeyes a 10.5-point favorite, and they are slumping. So maybe take a shot with Pitino, younger Pitino in that one. Who knows? Indiana and Rutgers, they are at 6:30 from Indianapolis. I mean, you'd say Indiana's got home court, but I don't really know how much that means. Rutgers, a bit of an up and down end to the season after a very strong start. You got to think they're in the tournament. One more win definitely solidifies them. The Hoosiers, meanwhile, below 500 is at the end for Archie Miller. 5 straight losses for the Hoosiers, losing to Michigan State and Michigan at home, so really staying in the state of Indiana. I don't really know if that makes that big of a difference. Penn State and Wisconsin's the late game tonight, and Penn State actually has played all right towards the end. I mean, they had that one slip-up loss to Nebraska, but they've won 3 straight, beating Minnesota, Maryland, and Nebraska in the final 3 and 4 or 5. So except for this dud here against Purdue, Penn State's actually been all right. And Wisconsin, who had a very strong start to the season, as you see all these wins, they have lost 3 consecutive games. And Wisconsin not exactly on the up and up. And they did lose to, well, they split with Penn State. They lost the first game with Penn State back in late January, then played them again in Madison and beat them. So we'll see what Penn State has left. Syracuse leading Virginia at the half. They're starting the second half. Miami and Georgia Tech as we shift now to the ACC. Miami comes into this game 9.5-point dogs. They've won 3 in a row. They beat Pitt and Clemson as dogs to start the ACC tournament. Now they get a 3rd straight game, and they face Georgia Tech, who beat them 87-60 in Coral Gables back on February 20th. So Josh Pastner and the mask that he wears on the sidelines, his clear mask, it's worked out well. 6 straight wins for Georgia Tech, and they have looked really good here down the stretch, including beating Virginia Tech on the road. But as far as away from Atlanta, what they've done this season, Wake isn't very good. Virginia Tech's a good win. Miami was down, lost to Clemson, lost to Louisville, lost to Duke, lost to Virginia, lost to FSU, beat Nebraska, who was last place in the Big Ten. So curious to see what Georgia Tech can do as a favorite away from home, because it's a neutral site game. But let's see what Georgia Tech has. Duke FSU wiped off the board because of the COVID issues with the Blue Devils. Carolina and Virginia Tech, they wrap up the night in Greensboro, and Carolina off that blowout of Notre Dame last night, 101-59. So Roy and the Tar Heels playing well, and they get Virginia Tech, who they have missed this season because they're supposed to play them on the 16th of February, and the Hokies had some COVID issues. And for Virginia Tech, they have not played a lot of games recently. You go back to the start of February, they beat Miami in overtime. Since then, they played 2 games. And they lost to Georgia Tech and beat a bad Wake Forest team. So they really haven't been tested. And that's the close of the night, in Carolina laying 3 in that one. Temple and USF continuing in the American. 2 games left in the AAC, Tulsa and Tulane. And for Tulsa, they actually have some revenge because they lost to Tulane 58-48 back on February 10th. And this was the worst offensive performance of the year for Frank Haith's team. 48 points against the Green Wave. But this was a big win here, beating Northeastern State, Oklahoma. I don't think they're getting in the tournament. Tulane, who has struggled down the stretch, they've lost 4 straight since beating USF. They had a little run here of ATS success, but they have not played well. They hung in this Wichita State game, and they ended up losing by 8. They were down big early. They made it interesting, but blown out at Cincinnati, blown out at Memphis, losing to UCF, so Tulane not exactly playing their best basketball. East Carolina and UCF, the final game of the AAC tonight. The Knights a 5.5-point favorite, and we see what East Carolina has done or not done. They've had a lot of games not played because of COVID issues, and they hung with UCF last time they played them back last week, but then blown out by Cincinnati on Sunday. And the Knights, who are trying to look for their 5th straight win, they've actually been all right here. Not exactly beating great competition. I mean, look at what they've beaten recently. Tulsa, even though Tulsa was better earlier in the season. So they beat Tulsa twice. They beat USF, and they beat Tulane, and Tulane twice in East Carolina. Not exactly resounding, but that's why UCF is favored here. Georgetown and Villanova continues in the Big East. Seton Hall and St. John's in the Big East, coming up at 3 o'clock at the Garden. Seton Hall's been atrocious. And the Pirates, 4 straight losses, 0-4 ATS the last 4 after this nice 4-0 run here. Just a very up-and-down season for Kevin Willard's team. And this game against St. John's, last time they played last Saturday, 81-71 loss, up 18-0 out of the gate. Seton Hall. They led 18-0 and lost by 10, so you do the math on that one. St. John's has actually been really good against the spread. Probably not making the tournament, but they actually had a really nice finish to the season. They beat Villanova, beat Xavier. I mean, I know Xavier melted down last night against Butler, but came back from double digits down to beat Providence. Same thing with Seton Hall. This is kind of a bad loss here to DePaul. That's a bad one. But still, St. John's picked it up after a slow start in Big East play, so Mike Anderson did a pretty good job with that team. Butler and Creighton. Butler down 19 last night to Xavier. They come back and win in overtime, 70-69. Kind of a silly play by Xavier. They foul with a few seconds left, thinking that they had a foul to give, and that wasn't the case. And Butler hit the 2 free throws, and they won by 1 over Xavier. But Butler actually, who struggled majorly here, 3-1 the last 4. Now they get Creighton again, who they just lost to by 20 back last Saturday. Now they're getting 9.5 against Creighton. They're getting their head coach back, McDermott, after he made some silly comments that got him in trouble last week. They had lost 2 straight. They beat Butler. Now they get Butler again. They actually lost to Butler on the road 70-66. So the Bulldogs, they'll compete. Not a great team, but they'll compete. DePaul and UConn, the last game in the Big East tonight. UConn laying 13 to DePaul. DePaul beat Providence last night. And UConn playing very well, 6-1 the last 7, losing to Villanova, no big deal. But you look at some of these wins, dominating Georgetown, beating Seton Hall by double digits, beating Marquette by double digits, beating Georgetown by double digits, beating Providence by double digits. So they really, UConn has stepped it up over the last few weeks. They had a little bit of a skid, but they played better in DePaul. They beat Providence last night to keep their season alive, 70-62. Last time they faced Providence, lost by 10, and they lost to an overtime earlier in the season by 5. So we'll see what kind of value there is now in taking DePaul, possibly getting 13 against UConn. SEC, Kentucky still down to Mississippi State. Vandy and Florida, they are the next game up in Nashville. And the Gators got to get their stuff straight. They've lost 2 in a row. They did beat Vandy by 7 as a 12.5-point favorite back on January 27th. And for Jerry Stackhouse, they actually, again, I've talked about Vandy. They've been competitive. Like, you got to give them that. Vandy has been somewhat competitive down the stretch. They haven't had consecutive covers, though, since late January, early February. You see off a cover, push, loss. Do you have another loss in you? We'll see. But they did beat Texas A&M last night. South Carolina, we'll get to South Carolina in a second. I skipped this game. Georgia, Mizzou at 7 o'clock. Georgia beat Missouri at home 80-70 last month as a 3-point dog. Now they get them again. But Georgia has gone backwards of late. They've lost 3 or 4, blown out by South Carolina. Hung with Alabama. I'll give them that. They did hang with Alabama for a bit. Lost by 10, getting 7. That was kind of a tough loss if you took the points with Georgia. But Missouri continues to be up and down. Beating Florida on the road. Beating Alabama. Beating Tennessee on the road. Beating Arkansas on the road. And that was before Arkansas got hot. But just lost to LSU this past week. Losing to Ole Miss a few times. So, again, Missouri, they cannot lose to Georgia, put it that way. I'm not saying if they win, they're in, but you lose this one, that really hurts. South Carolina and Ole Miss wrap up the night in the SEC. Ole Miss has looked good down the stretch, as they've won 7 of 9. They didn't play well in this rivalry game against Mississippi State. Can't lose to Vandy as 10.5-point favorites. But beating Kentucky, we know Kentucky's down. Beating Missouri twice, winning at Auburn, beating Tennessee at home. Ole Miss, after this tough stretch in early January, this Florida game, too, they blew. They were up in that game in the second half, and then Florida went on a huge run. But Ole Miss has been competitive. Maybe they're a team to look out for in the SEC tournament. Big 12, K-State and Baylor. Look at that. Baylor laying 20 to Kansas State. And Kansas State off of a good blowout win over TCU last night. K-State's won 4 or 5. Now they get Baylor, who they lost to by a lot. 107-59. Last time they played them, before that, 100-69. But Baylor's not sharp. Baylor's still going to be a top seed, but they beat Texas Tech. Maybe they're getting better, but they struggled in the West Virginia game. They lost to Kansas. Struggled against Iowa State. That was after the COVID stuff. But, you've beaten a team by 30-something, 40-something points already, So, K-State's got nothing to lose in that game. Oklahoma and Kansas, third time they're playing this season. They split the first 2 meetings. Oklahoma has not been good recently. They had to hold off Iowa State last night. Iowa State went 0 for the Big 12 this year. 1-4 for Lon Kruger's team. The last cover they got was against West Virginia way back on February 13th, but now they're a dog. They haven't been a dog since then. Kansas, they play well at it used to be the Sprint Center, now the T-Mobile Center, since T-Mobile bought Sprint. But T-Mobile Center in Kansas City, and it's like 40 minutes away from Lawrence. Struggled here in the UTEP game, had to come back, but Kansas has played very, very well. Lost this game in overtime to Texas. So we'll see what Kansas can do against Oklahoma. Texas Tech and Texas inside the Big 12, the finale tonight. And Texas Tech beat Texas in Lubbock, 68-59. Last time they hooked up back on February 27th. And they also beat the Longhorns in Austin on that Mac McClung shot back in mid-January. So 2 for 2 for Texas Tech against Texas this season. But the Red Raiders are a short favorite in that one. We'll skip through the Big Sky, no disrespect, in the Big West. And we will quickly look at the Pac-12. And inside the Pac-12, Arizona State and Oregon, they tip off at 2:30. Arizona State held off Washington State yesterday to snap a 2-game skid. And Arizona State lost at home to Oregon by 11 last time they played back in Tempe, back a month ago. Oregon's been on fire. As you see here, they've won 5 in a row. They've covered 4 straight. The only loss during the stretch since February 6th. Since losing to Washington State as an 11-point home favorite, Oregon has lost once to USC. Now is that makeup game on that Monday. But they've been terrific. Look at all the overs for the Ducks. So take Oregon in the over, right? Is that the easy play? Oregon laying 8.5, total of 147.5. Oregon State and UCLA, the 5:30 game out in Vegas. And the Beavers, they have won 3 of 4, just lost to their rivals, Oregon. Last time they played UCLA, getting 11.5, lost by 5. So in this game today, they're getting 5. So kind of curious to see what happens here with the Bruins. UCLA has dropped 3 in a row. They're not playing well. They just lost to USC on that buzzer beater. And McCronen's team not playing their best basketball. They're still in the tournament, but they can't afford a loss to Oregon State today. So I mentioned USC and the Trojans. They are in good shape for the moment, beating Stanford and UCLA after back-to-back road losses at Colorado and Utah. Now they get Utah again, so a bit of revenge for the Trojans, losing by 10 at Utah back at the end of February. Beat Utah by 18, so we see 2 dramatically different results with those 2 teams, and USC favored there by 7. Cal upset Stanford last night. Colorado laying 16.5 to Cal in the late game, the really late game tonight out in Vegas. And Colorado off 4 straight wins. They did lose to Cal as 10-point favorites back in Berkeley on 71-62 on February 13th. And they beat Cal by 29. So, again, 2 dramatically different results. So, see what you want to do with that game. And we got Conference USA, we have Mountain West, but we're going to skip over those because we got to get to NBA. Okay, let's look at today's free pick for college basketball. And for today's free pick, now I just want to let you know here on our picks page, we have our picks page here on every arena. This is for college basketball. We have our daily selections, as you see here, $29.95 per handicapper, and you get all of their plays if you buy the daily package. Let's say it's Alex Smart, you get all 13 plays. If it's Kevin Rogers, me, you get 2 plays. Whatever it is, those are the plays you get. So $29.95, you get all the plays. Now, scrolling down, if you select the guaranteed plays, it's very easy, as you see right here. You pay if it wins. So it's only one selection. And if it wins, you pay. If it loses, you don't pay. Simple as that. So those are the guaranteed picks for college basketball. And we are going to give you one free guarantee here on the live stream since you are watching, and we appreciate you watching. We're going to give out one free pick from one of our hot handicappers. And we're going to look at Scott Rickenbach. And Scott has a pick on Creighton Butler. And that's coming up at 6 o'clock. So let's take a look. And for Scott Rickenbach, he has the over of 135.5 for Creighton and Butler tonight at Madison Square Garden. And you see here we have these write-ups. So you have the analysis to go with the pick. So it's not just here's your pick and that's it. You can read why. Scott has his reasoning for the over in the Creighton-Butler game. And it's right there. And this we're giving out to you for free here on the live stream. But if you want to buy a guaranteed pick, you just go and click on the guaranteed picks page and you pick whichever handicapper you want. And you're not limited to one. You can take as many as you want. You can take one, you can take as many as you want. And the same thing with the daily picks. You're not limited to one handicapper. But you can see the amount of picks that they have, and you can purchase whoever you want, whenever you want, and you'll see when the picks populate because you'll see next to their name how many picks they have for the day. So this is Scott Rickenbach's pick for free. Yesterday, the free college pick was Joe Williams, his guarantee. He had his 15th in a row. He had Texas San Antonio. They covered against Charlotte. They were laying 5. They won by 11. So Joe Williams won again. And now Scott Rickenbach, we'll see what he does tonight with his guarantee pick over 135.5 in college basketball, Butler and Creighton. All right, let's take a quick look at the NBA. Last night, the 2 games, you had Memphis knocking off Washington last night and Dallas beating San Antonio. Memphis covered, Dallas covered. So both the favorites came in. Over came in on the Washington game. Under came in on the Mavs and Spurs, and San Antonio was leading at the half in that game. Dallas rallied back to win. So now let's look at tonight's NBA, and very busy night inside the association. We'll start with Charlotte and Detroit, and the Hornets off that long road trip to end the first half, and they had all these overs here, and they had a 3-3 road swing. Now they return to play Detroit, and we know the Pistons aren't very good, but the Hornets, though, not a lot of times they've been listed as a home favorite. Beat Minnesota here, lost to Chicago, beat New York, lost to Memphis, lost to Oklahoma City. So not great success. They've been better as a home underdog as opposed to a home favorite. So Charlotte laying 4.5 to Detroit tonight, and you see the Pistons just 9-26 so far in the season. Key game inside the Atlantic Division, Boston and Brooklyn. Marcus Smart returning for the Celtics. He's been out a while. But Kevin Durant still sidelined for Brooklyn. James Harden, obviously there. Kyrie Irving still there. Kyrie lit up his former team last time they played back on Christmas, this 123-95 win for the Nets over the Celtics. They pulled away in that one. That was a close game at the half, and then Brooklyn opened up in the second half. That was the last time they played. It was back on Christmas. So now fast forward to now, and a 10-1 run for Brooklyn since February 10th. Only loss coming to Dallas, and Kyrie didn't play that game, that Saturday night game at Barclays Center. So the Nets coming off a pair of road wins to close out the first half, overtime at San Antonio, and they blew out Houston, who's been terrible. For Boston, they've actually played better of late. And the Celtics, who really struggled at one point in the first half, they won 4 straight. Won all 4 at home, including a win over the Clippers. The Raptors kind of decimated with COVID issues. And they came back to beat Washington. Now, here's the key, though, with Boston. They have lost 6 straight on the road. But their last 4 on the road, they were favored. At Atlanta, at Dallas, Luka hit that 3 at the end. At New Orleans, they blew the big lead and lost in overtime. At Washington, didn't play well. So last 4 favored. They were dogs here at Phoenix and Utah, 2 of the best teams in the West. Beat the Clippers here. So now you're getting them as a dog. I don't think it's a terrible spot for the Celtics, and Brooklyn laying that low of a number, and Blake Griffin's not playing just yet for the Nets. Atlanta is at Toronto. In Tampa. So Atlanta, they're back in the Sunshine State. They played 2 against the Heat, 1 against the Magic before the All-Star break. Now they're in Tampa to play the Raptors. Toronto is without a bunch of guys. Pascal Siakam's out. Van Vliet is out. All the COVID stuff. They should be returning soon. And Toronto's lost 4 of 5. You're getting them as a home dog here. They're trying to avenge this loss to the Hawks, 132-121 back on February the 6th. And Atlanta, they've been up and down as a road favorite. 1 at Washington, 1 at Minnesota, 1 at Chicago way early in the season, but also lost to the Knicks, lost to the Cavs, lost to the Thunder, their last 3 as a home, or as a road favorite rather. Pushed here against Orlando. They were down big, and they needed to rally to just get the push. And obviously playing a little better with Nate McMillan as their head coach. He replaced Lloyd Pierce. And this is, say, the end of a road trip. It's not really fair because they had the All-Star break in between. But Atlanta laid points against Toronto. The Hawks just get very frustrating at times because they obviously have the best scorer on the floor in Trae Young, but defensively not very sound. Magic and the Heat, they hook up down in Miami, and this is the first time they're playing since opening night when the Magic beat the Heat 113-107. And the Heat have actually been on fire. Pardon the pun, but it's what they are. And you see here, they've won 7 of 8. They lost to Atlanta, but beat New Orleans on the road without Zion, but also Bam Adebayo didn't play either for the Heat, and he's still sidelined. And the Heat, with this little stretch here, against Orlando twice, Chicago, Cleveland, Memphis, Indiana twice before Phoenix, got a big opportunity to get some breathing room in the Southeast Division. And Orlando had a nice run here, winning 3 straight, but they've dropped 5 in a row. And the Magic are just a beat-up team. Simple as that. They weren't great coming into this year, but they got a bunch of guys out. Philly's at Chicago, and the Bulls are laying 3.5 because Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons are still sidelined due to the close contact with the barber during the All-Star break. So that's why the Bulls are favored at home against the 76ers. And Philadelphia off back-to-back wins to close the first half against the Pacers. They blew them out. They rallied against Utah in overtime. And on the road, at least as a road dog, Philly has not been good. Losing to Utah, losing to Phoenix, beat Indiana in a game they had no business winning. And that was without, I believe Joel Embiid was out of that game. And their bench totally shocked the Pacers in the fourth quarter. They outscored them, I think, by 18 it was. The Pacers were in control that whole game. And Memphis, they lost. Atlanta, they lost a bunch of guys. This is when they had some COVID issues here. So Philly has not been a good road dog. And is that a big selling point on Chicago? Well, the Bulls have still been pretty respectable. Beat New Orleans to end the first half. They did lose to Philly here, 112-105. But again, the Sixers had their full squad. The Bulls, as a home favorite, needed overtime to beat Minnesota. Came from 25 down to beat Detroit. Lost to Washington, split with the Knicks, lost to the Blazers, and that Damian Lillard 3 at the buzzer. So Chicago's not a great home favorite. Chicago's not a great home favorite. Philly's not a great road dog. So you choose. Minnesota and New Orleans. This is a revenge game for the Pelicans. They lost to the Timberwolves 120-110 back in January. And I've told you this before. I'm going to keep saying this. I'm not going to stop. New Orleans has not been a good home favorite this year. Lost outright to Chicago. Didn't cover against Detroit. Lost to Portland. Beat Houston. Everyone's beating Houston. Lost to Sacramento. Beat Washington. But then losing these three to Indiana, OKC, Charlotte. Didn't cover against San Antonio. So New Orleans, they're getting Zion back tonight. They've not been good as a home favorite. Minnesota has actually, look at all the losses there. They haven't covered a game since February 14th. So Minnesota is going down the same Sacramento-Houston road, just losing games, not covering either. And by the way, spoiler alert, Houston plays Sacramento tonight. We'll get to that in just a second. Knicks and Bucks. The Knicks actually beat up Milwaukee last time they played them at the Garden, 130-110 as 13-point dogs back in late December. And the Knicks have been good under Tibbs. They played well, beat Detroit to end the first half. This is not an easy stretch here. At Milwaukee, at Brooklyn, at Philly, Oklahoma City. That's a revenge game, too, for the Knicks because they lost to Oklahoma City at home earlier this season. But that's still going to be a big test for the Knicks. And they get this Bucks team who closed out the first half, rallying past Memphis. They got blown out by Denver, but won 5 straight before that. The only quality team they beat was the Clippers. But Milwaukee, this will be a good game at Philly. They didn't play Philly yet this year. But the Bucks laying 10.5. Dallas laying 5.5 at Oklahoma City. Dallas beat San Antonio last night. Oklahoma City just lost to Dallas before the All-Star break. Luka didn't play 87-78, so 220 total, 219.5. Does it threaten tonight? We'll see. And now for the 3 late games, Warriors and Clippers in L.A. at Staples. Paul George still a question mark. Clippers laying 7. These teams met up in early January in San Francisco. Clippers won the first game 108-101. Warriors won the second game 115-105. Both games stayed under. Clippers back home after dropping their last 3 on that 5-game road trip, giving up 119 to Washington, 117 to Boston. And they get Golden State and they go back on the road for 3 more. And the Warriors have been on a nice under run on the road of late. 3 straight unders here. 3 unders since going over against Orlando, and a couple unders against San Antonio. This game you got to throw out. Steph didn't play. Lost in the final seconds to Damian Lillard and the Blazers. This one they got blown out. So we'll see what Golden State has tonight. Getting 7, total of 230.5 against the Clippers. Rockets and Kings. Somebody's got to cover, right? Somebody has to cover. Look at this. 13 straight losses for the Rockets. 13. They were 11-10 at one point. 11-10 without James Harden. And they've lost 13 in a row now. And Christian Wood might be the MVP of this league. Since he's been out, they can't win a game. But you see what they've done here, the Rockets. One cover came against the Sixers. I mean, they've been horrible. Sacramento has not been any better. Let's not give them any applause. They lost both games to the Kings. Or, I'm sorry, lost both games to the Rockets, excuse me. James Harden played in one of these games, then sat out the other one. 122-119 lost at Houston, 102-94. And the Kings have covered 2 games since February 7th. They've won 2 and covered 2, and they beat the Lakers here without anybody. Without LeBron, without Anthony Davis. So you want to lay 4.5 at Sacramento? Go ahead. You want to take 4.5 with Houston? Go ahead. Good luck. Phoenix is at Portland. That's actually a really good matchup. Suns just blew out the Blazers last time they played. Back on February 22nd, 132-100. Big third quarter, and the Suns kind of cruised to that one. Remember, Phoenix has not... Or let me rephrase that. Phoenix, every game they have won this year, they have covered. Regardless of the role. Favorite underdog. So now you're laying 4.5. Do you say, all right, keep it rolling if I like Phoenix. Don't worry about money lines. They're going to cover this or not. Portland has been better as a home dog. They struggled earlier in the season, but they beat Golden State. They beat Philly here. And Portland now on a 6-1 run at home, and they only came to Washington where they had a big first quarter and then fell apart in the second quarter. But Portland went from 6 straight wins to 4 straight losses to 3 straight wins. So figure out the roller coaster with the Blazers, and they're going to have 3 straight back-to-back sets, or I should say 2-game series, with Minnesota, New Orleans, and Dallas. So that's a look at the NBA. Now it's time to give out our free selection for the NBA tonight. And just like the college basketball, here are the daily picks for the NBA. $29.95 per handicapper. You could pick whoever you want who has selections on tonight's game, and you can buy it here. Also, the guaranteed picks, $39.95 for the NBA. If you win, you pay. If you lose, you don't pay. So we're going to take a look at one of the hot handicappers in the NBA and give out a free selection. And we're going to go with our friends ASA from the great state of Wisconsin. And ASA has the Boston-Brooklyn winner for $39.95 normally. You get it for free here because you're watching the live stream, because today is an appreciation day. Every day is an appreciation day in the live stream. Let's take a look at what ASA has. ASA is going to lay the points with the Brooklyn Nets. So laying 2.5 with Brooklyn. And the Nets, as they note here, when they lay 4.5 or less, they're 6-0 against the spread. It's a pretty good number. Remember, no Durant, but you have Kyrie and Harden playing for the Nets, obviously. I mean, Harden's played basically in every game for Brooklyn. Say what you want about him, but at least he shows up every game. And Boston off a 4-game winning streak, so we'll see what Boston does tonight now going on the road. They've struggled on the road, and they lost to Brooklyn earlier this season. So ASA has the Brooklyn Nets as their selection against the Boston Celtics tonight at Barclays Center in Brooklyn. That is their guaranteed pick. Remember, you can buy guaranteed picks from our handicappers for $39.95. We'll give you one free pick here on the live stream every day. So that is the look. And again, you can buy whoever the pick pack here. You want 3 plays, you want 7 plays. You go with your handicapper, and those are your selections for tonight in the NBA. And taking a look at what we have on our homepage here, a lot of game previews to look at. And don't forget to check out our tournament prediction pages as well. And here, for instance, even the Big Ten will have predictions on these games. Every day they're updated. And you can check out as well the tournament results in these games. And we'll have them for every conference. We have the Big Ten, Big East, Pac-12, SEC, Big 12, Mountain West. So, and the ACC as well. We have them all. So you can check them out here at VegasInsider.com. And again, we appreciate you watching. And again, a very busy day. Lots to go over. And this is actually a fun time of year. It's actually a very good day, I believe. This Thursday during conference tournament week is always fun because you have games from basically 11:30 a.m. all the way to tipping off at 11:30 at night in the Pac-12. So all day you have games. All the networks have the games on. So Thursday's a great day. Friday's a very good day as well. And then Sunday we'll find out where everyone's playing. So we'll have Selection Sunday. And don't forget, we're going to have a live stream. When I say don't forget, you don't know, so I'm going to tell you right now. This Sunday, we're going to have a live stream coming up during the brackets when they're released, around 6:30 or so. So check us out on our YouTube channel at VegasInsider.com for the live stream. And we're going to unveil the brackets and let you know who is playing who, where in the state of Indiana, and when. So all of that is coming up Sunday. We'll be back with you tomorrow for another edition of the Daily Insider on our YouTube channel here at Vegas Insider. I am Kevin Rogers. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, best of luck with your bets.